by delivering is where we add value to the client. If we don't deliver, it takes away from the value of the firm, right? So when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, wow, we are absolutely, humbled by the fact that people are putting that kind of faith, and it's our responsibility to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different mindset than someone who's out trying to, just get a deal done, push a deal. So trusted advisor, again, you'll see our mission statement and our principles and everything that goes along with it.
Right.
Are all around making sure that we are the trusted advisor first and foremost, so people can see
culture, back to your culture.
Back to culture.
Who you are.
It's what defines us.
Hi, this is Matt Slepin, and welcome to Leading Voices in Real Estate. Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with Roy March, the CEO of Eastdil Secured, recorded on January 20th. Part 1 of that conversation focused largely on the history of Eastdil Secured, which, if you think about it, is a pretty good proxy for the huge changes that took place in the broader real estate investment landscape from about the S&L crisis days through to the GFC. Part 2 shifts that conversation more to what has made Eastdil Secured such a powerhouse in the CRE investment business. Roy is a great storyteller, and you can feel it from his passion and understand from his stories the approach and super focus on clients that Roy has brought to the business. Other things to listen for? First, this would not be this story without the merger of Eastdil and Secured Capital. 1 + 1 in this case is equal to 4. Roy himself and Eastdil is one side of the coin, but Secured Capital and Mike VK, who was on the pod with my friend Chris Hartung back in December of 2022, are an equal part of the story. Sometimes M&A does gel, and I love the complementariness and synergy between Roy and VK, between Eastdil and Secured, that really made this company what it's become. And Roy talks a lot about culture in this conversation. Sometimes for me, and I'm a culture guy, the culture part of the discussion feels obligatory. But sometimes culture is the story, and I believe that's the case here. And as we talk about the culture of Eastdil Secured, you've got to compare in your own mind the cultures of the giants, CBRE, JLL, and Cushman, and now Newmark, on the one hand, which have very different drivers, and on the other hand, more similarly focused investment shops like Walker Dunlop, Berkadia, Marcus Millichap, and others. You've got to think about companies within the context of their competitive landscape. Finally, I used the term broker with Roy and was immediately corrected to investment banker. Language actually is important, and if you make it real, it can help you to transcend the genre, which Roy has done himself, not just being super broker, but truly an aligned investment banker, and both leader within his firm and within the industry. Roy most certainly transcends the genre. Roy and I only touch on this for a split second on the show, but what comes next for this firm with Roy's one-day retirement and in the continued changes in the business, and again within its competitive landscape? Nothing is forever. The business is always evolving. And I'll be fascinated to see how these guys get to play and continue to lead as our markets recover into the next cycle. I said it in the introduction to part 1. At our essence, executive recruiters are brokers too, and the best of us transcend the genre and are advisors and consultants. Through my recruiting career, I've always asked myself, how do I transcend my recruiter, say, headhunter genre? And how well does a firm like ZRG also transcend the genre to be that differentiated, trusted advisor like Roy and Eastdil Secured has become? Over my 4 years at ZRG, I've watched the pieces come together, and the firm has moved steadily in that direction. And it's been my privilege to be a part of that knitting together of a great firm. If you're enjoying the show, please rate our show on your podcast app, and please follow and subscribe to the show and share your favorite episodes with colleagues and friends. With 220-plus episodes, the library is an amazing resource. The advisory business has been one of the ongoing themes on the show, so if you want to dive deeper, do listen on the above-mentioned interview with Mike VK and Chris Hartung. Listen in on my conversation with Justin Wheeler from Berkadia, and also my interview with Brett White, who led both CBRE and Cushman Wakefield. So I encourage you to explore the archives on the ZRG website or on your podcast app and find and share an episode that expands your understanding of our industry. If you have comments on the show, or if you'd like to talk about how ZRG can help your business on the talent side, including search, consulting, or advisory in the real estate space, please contact me at mslepin@zrgpartners.com. We start the conversation back up with Roy with a question from my colleague Alan Walker, who joined me on the interview with Roy. I hope that you enjoy this part 2 of the conversation with Roy March.
We're about to come up on another crisis in the timeline here, but I'm curious, given all the challenges that you seem to have navigated, I won't say I'm sure it wasn't seamless, but effectively and efficiently, I'm really curious how you've been able to do that. Were there any keys to approaching those situations that will enable you to integrate different teams and pivot and change along the way?
Yeah, I would say it starts with culture and stacking culture along the way. If you look at our history, and I know I'm taking it down all these strands, and I apologize, but again, it's sort of the way I think. It's more of a matrix than it is a linear thing. But bottom line is, we had this partnership culture. Wells Fargo, the reason why they were such a good lender is they were relationship oriented. They weren't just profits oriented, and they had been focused in a core aspect of what we did. So they knew our business, and we knew their business very, very well. The first large piece of debt they did in Southern California was the financing for the acquisition of the Irvine Company. They hadn't been in Southern California before that. So there was a lot of symmetry, we felt, and a lot of culture stacking. It happened to be true when we brought in Nomura. They had, a mindset, and they had culturally, they wanted to protect their clients, they wanted to be trusted, and they wanted to have, in essence, a best in class delivery system, if you will, for the product that they were acquiring and structuring and ultimately distributing. So we had, and they sat on our board, but it was a passive interest from them. So they allowed us to do what we were going to do. Then the Nomura, and then Wells Fargo, obviously we had that relationship with. And then if you look at Secured, that was, again, an investment banking culture, partnership culture that blended very, very well with us. So the mentality is that of partnership. Yeah. And we're sort of in the foxhole together at all times. And if you look at it, I think we're unique. And one of the unique aspects of it is that when you look at our global business, it's all been developed to serve our clients and to be the most relevant provider of trusted advice and execution. And when you look at that from that perspective, it's, we are all one. I think we're one of the few places in the world that ultimately our compensation system is salary plus bonus on a global basis. We don't have any single profit center other than the firm's profit center, which is culturally, it is a partnership like the good old days prior to the corporate, Goldman Sachs of the world and Morgan Stanley's of the world and the like. And so that was when you ask the question, it's because we're in it together. We're partners. We're thinking about one another, and we're thinking about what's going to best serve ultimately our clients. Survival is one of them. That's a key piece. If we can survive, then we can serve. But if you look at ultimately the way that we invest in our people, we invest in them as you would a partnership. And so that's sort of one piece of it. But to be specific about it, it's having a sense of urgency without a sense of panic. Okay? And
beautiful balance.
Where does that come from? It comes from standing at a phone booth, with a roll of dimes in your hand and thinking the world has come to an end 15 months into your real estate investment banking career, which I didn't know what it was, to be honest. And coming out the other side, right? And I'll tell you just a brief little story, if I might, an aside here.
Tell the story, and then I have different questions. I'm going to move us to
I'm sorry. I have
place.
no idea how you're going to edit this, but
And neither do I.
Yeah, but hopefully
It's all good. No, it's all
hopefully
good.
it's good. But so COVID. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'll bring you back to what I think you were headed towards in terms of the next crisis in between. So COVID hits, and I remember standing right out here watching the TV March 13th, Friday the 13th, watching Trump in the Rose Garden. I said, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to remember this day for the rest of your life. This is going to be the biggest crisis you've ever faced, most of you, because most of them hadn't been through the GFC or any of the other things that had come along. Mark my words. So, and candidly, we didn't know the extent of what it was going to be. You couldn't know because it was an exogenous shock to the system, and it shocked all systems. But at the end of the day, we had, and we can talk about kind of how we reinforce our culture. We do that by assessing, as we've grown, how intact our culture truly is independently, with General McChrystal coming in and doing a cultural assessment, communications and the like. So we ended up with, these VTCs, which
What's VTC?
Video teleconferencing prior to it becoming popular. And we ended up with all the Cisco stuff the Department of Defense had in doing the things that McChrystal did, right? So we were able to utilize that to be able to be in contact with our people from 2015 on, every week, every day, live, right? For all that. We still do them every other week. We do a global VTC where it's full communication, best plays, market information that's going to be relevant around the world, literally 1 hour. Every other week we do sectors. So we do finance every week as well. We do sectors, retail, hospitality. Those are every other week. And then those backfill into the roll up of our global process in the other week. So we're standing there, we're sitting there, at home, slapping each other in the back, the old guys saying, don't worry, we've had plenty of crises in the past, and ultimately things are going to be okay. And it hit me that given the segment of people who had never been through anything like this, were going through an existential crisis themselves. So I recalled, as I said, my goal was for us to be in one of General McChrystal's books. He had asked me to interview him at a book release. He and Chris Fussell, who was his aide-de-camp when he was head of JSOC, ran Special Warfare, which was SEAL Team 6. He and I we were down in Yorba Linda doing a book release at the Nixon Library. All these vets in the crowd, pretty conservative group of people, as you might imagine, Orange County. And he asked me to do, basically it was a Charlie Rose type of interview with he and Fuss. And so we went through a little bit of that, and there was 15 minutes of open mic at the end of it. And this young kid steps up, clenching a book, tie on, basically says, General McChrystal, I graduated this morning, I've enlisted in the Army, and I'm thinking about a career in the service or one of the agencies. Do you have any advice for me? And he looked at him, he said, thank you, first of all, for your service. Appreciate you. And the best advice I could give you is to develop the deepest sense of empathy you possibly can for the people you work with, the people you work for, and who work for you. And the whole crowd sort of went, because McCraven was about making your bed and, the protocol and, chain of command and all that. And here's this. And literally there was a gasp, right?
Right.
And so afterwards I pull him aside and I'm like, what was that all about? I mean, didn't see that kind. He goes, well, I could not ask the men and women of our country, these young people, to risk their lives without knowing what they were going through. Definition of empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right.
He was on mission every single night. And he had ultimately developed this great sense of empathy for the people, which is the mark of a great leader, right? Understanding what you're asking people to do because you've done it and you're experiencing it. So, and he went on to tell me that he'd also did that with, the enemy, if you will. He was after the perpetrators of terror, not the people who've been conscripted, that were basically, farmers and herders and things like that. They didn't have a cause necessarily. They didn't have a country. They were just trying to keep their families alive by being conscripted. That's what kept their families alive. So his plan was to make sure that the perpetrators were the ones that were impacted. Very low collateral damage. If you read Robert Gates' book, he'll say that he was the best field general that we've had since MacArthur. Bottom line is that kind of, for whatever reason, that has been a huge, huge, huge part now of my life, which is why I admire him so much. But at the end of the day, I literally, this is going to sound so silly and so plain. The next time we got up, I basically said, look, let me try to see it from your perspective, what we're going through right here, the concerns, the panic, the anxiety that you're going through. My guess is somewhere along the line, whether you were cut from a sports team, whether you got a bad grade, that you had a relationship breakup, that you went to your parents and you basically said, look, I'm going through this life crisis, what do I do? And they probably looked at you and said, look, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. And you probably spun on your heels, rolled your eyes, and said, what the do you know about what I'm going through right now? And I said, and then as you get older and you go through these, you realize your parents weren't just supporting you. They were actually trying to help you understand their experience. They're sharing their experience of going through crises. And as a result, it's not just about comfort. It's about experience of knowing that the other end, it's going to be all right.
So you're going to get through the other
You're going to get through the other end. So you ask the question, how do you do these things? You don't know. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. I just know that I've got enough experience and that we have enough experience, and the depth chart here is divine. I mean, really, I'm the luckiest person in our sector and in our industry to be able to have that. But that's the code. That's the motto. And that's what helps you get through these things, is by having a sense of urgency and ultimately no panic, adapting and proceeding.
Urgency, no panic does come from having been through it before. It comes from maturity. There's some good age things in there, right? It's the positive thing about having had some experience under your belt, and you get through that stuff. So, but
it's hard again. When I don't know which generation is harder, at the time, but we got different generations that have been brought up in different, environments, and God knows their parents were feeling the anxiety, and a lot of this stuff. I mean, I was feeling it. We all had to lead through it.
COVID was different than a financial crisis, but it was. So it had both.
It turned into one.
There was an unknown that was astonishing for us.
But that's not where their heads were. Their heads were more the existential aspect of it. People dying, all that stuff. And so, and ultimately created an incredible bond. Right. And when you go through tragedies, you end up with an incredible bond. And so, and I look at all these moments along the way, from the first time that, Volcker increases the discount rate to COVID. This has been a bonding experience for us as a partnership.
So I want to ask questions. In 10 minutes, I want to ask you about where we're going as a sector. But I want to reserve the next 10 minutes to think a little bit about your business from a different perspective. You've told the story and we understand what the business is. We've had two different guests on the podcast who've talked about their companies, and they're really different, right? So we had Justin Wheeler from Berkadia talk about his company, and we had Brett White talk about both CBRE and Cushman Wakefield. So let's think about Brett for a minute, because the business they created was holistic and diverse in its settings, alongside with AUM. And the market said, okay, this is what you have to be a public real estate brokerage company, whatever the right word is. And you all have followed a different path. So you've stayed in the investment bank / brokerage. I want to think what that means and what greatness means and how that perseveres into the next cycle from your standpoint. Right. And by the end of that next cycle, you probably won't be here anymore yourself. So what does all that mean together?
Yeah. Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, think about, what is it that makes this special and makes this last? You've talked about partnership, and again, so different than a CB, which is gunslingers or something, right?
No, it's Lord of the Flies. I mean, it's basically, kill what you eat, eat what you kill, excuse me. And it is not a sense of community, if you will. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but if you look at the original investment banks, they were set up in a partnership form. And it wasn't until, the modern day that, a Goldman or a Morgan Stanley went public, and they did it for a reason, because they needed the capital to be able to do the things they do. Having said that, we've been able to do that by leveraging the relationships that we've had and the partnerships we've had to be able to continue to do things the way we do it. And again, I have the book open over there for you to see, but this industry didn't exist until Ben Lambert founded it. He was
industry, meaning what?
Real estate investment banking did not exist until he created it. What he foresaw was that what was a very local market business, tenants were local, developers were local, financial sources were local. With a growing economy and these growing companies, they were going to require more space, and across all sectors. You're going to require more hotels, more retail, more multifamily, more housing, more industrial, you name it. And when we get to what we're going to require a lot more of that nobody's ready for in our industry, you'll see where we're going in this, and why I think it's maybe the most exciting thing for us to really create our imprint. But bottom line is, he foresaw that was going to require institutional capital, right? And up until that point, it was basically local banks providing the capital.
Story I tell on the podcast all the time is the cowboys versus business platforms. Institutionalization is the opposite of the cowboys.
Exactly.
So it was totally decentralized 25 years ago.
So June 1971. Okay, let me take you back. This is one of the
I knew it was coming.
This is one of the best stories of all time. So Ben started at Hurd & Company, which was a subsidiary of Eastdil and Union Securities. Disk Dean, you probably remember that name, who ultimately went over to CPI, had worked in a sale-leaseback department at Eastdil and Union Securities. Ben started Eastdil after Disk left.
Wow.
At 27, utilizing the investment banking format to do sale-leasebacks for corporations. So the original sale-leasebacks were all done, through more of a corporate and investment banking model. Then, utilizing that, and which is why our compensation system creates incentives for collaboration. We compete like hell outside. We love each other on the inside. Literally, I don't think there's any other firm like ours.
There's not.
That has a global P&L. And that means, all for one for all, for the benefit of the client. The client wins, the firm wins, the team wins.
Compensation structure drives culture.
Absolutely reinforces it if it doesn't drive it, for sure. He foresaw that, but he also foresaw this institutionalization. Now, Ben was a fine arts major at Brown. He ended up sculpting deals when it was all said and done. I always talk left brain, right brain. Some of us, are a little less one side versus the other. Mine on numbers, his on numbers were less. big brain right here.
Yep. You pointed to VK.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And bottom line is, there's as much seance as there is science in our business. And it's being able to read that, because when you look at how this all works, demand drives value. Why does somebody want to live, work, play, shop,
Mm-hmm.
So understanding the human nature, right? And that motivates people is critical to our business. My advice to all these young kids who come through during the summer or trying to figure out what to be and what to do: history, art history, philosophy.
Mm.
Take the humanities, if you will, to heart, because it's as important, maybe a 1% more important than the science of it all. So Ben, that was his natural orientation, but he was also, he was an artist. And so, like, if you look at our cards, just as an example, they're basically an English solicitor card, that ultimately, it falls out of, if you were to put 3 cards together, that card will fall out.
Business cards.
Business card,
Okay.
right? Going all the way back into the day. And he used to leave these cards in the back of taxi cabs in New York City. One day, it would sit Ben Lambert, real estate investment banker. One day he gets a call from a CEO of a railroad company who said, I don't know what you do, I don't know how you do it, but it seems like you do something that might be able to be helpful to me. He said, I've got this guy who keeps calling about trying to buy land from us to develop industrial buildings. Can you call him? The guy was Trammell Crow. We did every single financing for Trammell, debt, equity, starting with industrial, then moving into ultimately, and then all the spinoffs that came along with it. As it turns out, he then was getting involved in the office business. And in June of 1971, the very first institutional joint venture was ever done. It was Embarcadero One and the Hyatt Regency. And Rockefeller was an equity partner. John Portman was a partner, and the architect. And Prudential was brought in as that institution, because Prudential was the largest at the time, and insurance companies were just starting to get in the business of investing in these things. The Taubman deals came. Hilton. These were all institutional joint ventures as a result of Ben's relationships with Don Knabb at the time, grew these Prudential investments into mainstream real estate assets. So institutionally, what he saw was it was going to require that scale in order to deliver the amount of capital that was going to be required to develop these larger scale deals on a multiple basis.
Cool. We're going to have to move this along, so I'm scared you're going to have the cane pull you out of the room at some point. And and there's subjects we have.
Well, there's
not yet
nothing
covered
in here that's really that interesting, to be honest, other than walking down memory lane.
I want to pull on a couple threads, and then I want to change subject. The thread I want to pull on is, you said we're a data, information, I'll also say relationship business. And the combination of that, I'm going to mash that up with the concept of AI over the next 10 years. And then mash that up with what kind of talent works, and then how you manage that information among evolving talent in the next generation. And one other comment, we were at a ZRG event last week where we had heads of HR in particular from Apollo and a couple of other firms, but they were talking about the next generation of people that will be successful. And their comment was, we needed math people, and now it's we need emotive people, empathetic people understand stuff. So talk about all that together. That's a mouthful.
Well, Jensen Huang will say, AI will not replace your job, but people who are using AI will. If you came out of this, the Consumer Electronics conference, they'll tell you that while everybody talked about AI and the developments in the future, the one thing that they all agreed on, beyond where this might take you, is storytelling, the ability to storytell. And so what we are looking for when we're looking for people, we're not looking for math majors. We prefer, candidly, people who are at state schools that
Davis.
are on scholarship,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
that have student loans. These are people who are grinders, who are self-starters, typically. Doesn't mean that we don't, ultimately recruit from the Ivy League. We do. But people who appreciate, the process and the grind and all that goes along with it. But most importantly, we're looking for visionary storytelling in these people. The math and what AI is going to do, AI is going to help refine that. But it is using AI, by the people who know how to utilize it to tell the story. When you think about what we do, we don't get paid when we're hired. We get paid when we succeed.
Right.
We ultimately, and that's the way we've always developed our business is, we don't get, there'll be times when we get paid advisory fees and all that stuff, but it's not really where our head is. Our head is delivering, for our clients. And I always step back and think about the fact that people are risking their net worth, their livelihood, if they're working for an insurance company or even for a PE company.
Right.
That choice of us is a risk they're taking. We need to take the responsibility for that ourselves and deliver as if it's ours. Right. And so when you think about it, all we've got, and people will say, well, you don't risk anything, it's an easy business. No, every single person, 330 some odd professionals, client-facing professionals, every single one of them risks a piece of our franchise value by not believing that collectively, that by delivering is where we add value to the client. If we don't deliver, it takes away from the value of the firm, right? So when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, wow, we are absolutely, humbled by the fact that people are putting that kind of faith, and it's our responsibility to deliver. That's a different mindset than someone who's out trying to, just get a deal done, push a deal. So trusted advisor, again, you'll see our mission statement and our principles and everything that goes along with it.
Right.
Are all around making sure that we are the trusted advisor first and foremost, that people can see
Culture, back to your culture.
Back to culture.
Who you are.
It's what defines us.
Let me go back to the question I asked, and it may be too technical a question, but I've always had this in my mind, which is if I could take all of the data and all the relationships that I have or that my company has and put it in my own brain, in one brain, then I would have random access to it to be able to use it to know, oh, we know that guy, we know that person, we understand that. Here's the wisdom from that. But taking that from 500 people or 2,000 people and putting it together is into a computer or into a culture so that everyone has random access to those relationships.
Right.
It's really hard.
It is, which is we've done since 2005-ish, $3 trillion in transactions. Think about the leases.
Right, the value of the data from
all that information that goes into it. One of the reasons why, it was worth taking all of our information with us when we were acquiring the company back. It was because that information is priceless.
Yep.
Right. It is literally the DNA of virtue. I mean, if I walked you through Century City or I walked you through New York City, there isn't a block that I can't point to that we haven't had an involvement in.
Right.
And so what happens is people, so the way we screen deals is basically someone identifies an opportunity, we swarm it, we then qualify it. So it comes back through our management committee for authorization. We don't take on something unless it gets approved. It's not like randomly people can take on business. Why?
Right.
Because we're trying to protect the value of the franchise, A, and we're trying to make sure that our people are spending their time on things that are actionable, right?
Mhm.
So as soon as that happens, that goes into our database. We have a data lake that has every single thing you can imagine in it, from, again, leases
And
to...
now AI lets you access it because it doesn't have to be normalized as it used to in the past.
And we do have people who, bad information, garbage in, garbage out. We have people who actually are only making sure that it's clean and accurate data that goes in, so that we can access it coming back out. But one of the things that I find is we're really good when we're pushed. So what we've done with this information is that access will trigger something that will say, okay, here are similar types of transactions that have occurred. These are the kinds of buyers that ultimately come in. And at the very end, by the way, of a transaction, we have, a deal summary that goes into our data lake. Who were the first through 5 players? Who do we talk to? What was their reaction? All that data goes into this. So now when you try and qualify a deal, it comes back to you and tells you the other 5 deals that may have some characteristic that would be helpful in all this.
Mhm.
It also tracks the deal itself, so that we've got the leases. A major lease comes up in 12 to 15 months. That's going to, depending on size, it's going to probably create a refinancing and or some characteristic.
Mhm.
That's how we get the efficiency out of having 300 people doing $250 billion of volume.
Right.
And think about how that informs the story of each of those deals.
Exactly.
And knowing the losers, really important. The losing bidders, because they're hungry and they're qualified and they're good.
That's
They're
our
your friends.
those are our next 4 or 5 deals.
Yeah, we have that with
Yeah.
clients in headhunting,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
other candidates
Yeah.
and how we treat the candidates who don't
Yeah.
get the job is,
Yeah.
for me, my secret sauce.
Yeah.
It's the most
Yeah.
important part of it.
So that's but that's, I mean, it's just a different orientation, I
Huh.
guess is the best way to say it. And that is, again, all for one for all.
I bet one thing within your comp and your cultural structure, unlike in the giant companies, is that you're able to better command. Compliance is the wrong word, but everyone is in it together. So therefore they will share in a way that is not natural in those
Yeah.
other systems. It's just,
Well, we're also the largest owners of our company.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
literally, we own more of this company than any other employees own of their companies,
Uh-huh.
period. And we own more than our investors own.
Okay, so I have more subjects here. So the next one is, if you look forward over the next 5 to 10 years in the real estate business globally, give me a few headlines. Not this year, but looking forward broadly, how does it meaningfully change? And you could tell me a little bit about the Eastdil Secured story over that 10 years,
Yeah.
and some succession and ownership and what the company looks like, as well as the
But
business.
bottom line is that as you look at digital infrastructure today and this huge rush into it and the amount of capital that's going to be required to deliver the physical aspects of it, with whether it's the property, the power, the land, the property that houses the GPUs and all the things that go into it, all of that looks like it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 trillion.
Mhm.
And you've got all these huge, AA rated companies that have a lot of capital, but they don't have that kind of capital to spend on this kind of thing. But their underlying value of their companies are dependent upon them being, fast followers, if not first movers in this space. So you've got this arms race that's going on right now, and it is, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of capital that's going to be required for it. If we do not solve that capital story,
Mhm.
it's going to put pressure on the cost of capital for real estate.
Crowd out. Yeah.
It has the risk of crowding it out. That is our
Mhm.
absolute focus right now is to make sure that the distribution of that capital is such that it doesn't create a shortage of capital for commercial real estate, or otherwise the cost of capital is going to go up.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that? And how then also, if you do it and the dollars come in, when they invent a smarter, less energy intensive way to do that business doesn't then fall into the tank, even though the use will continue.
Well, bottom line is that it's going to be, this is going to be a constant change. I mean, we're not even talking about quantum computing, which everybody says, oh, it's going to be end of the decade. Well, it's 2026. Okay. Say the same thing about energy, the nuclear energy. It's not going to be, well, I happen to know because we're investors in things around nuclear and enriching uranium to the point of being able to do things that are on a component basis and all those kinds of things that are going to be able to serve these things, because we're going to run out of energy before we run out of money. But bottom line is we got to look at that as an alternative. So what is the residual value in these things? That's the question.
Yep.
And the answer is, the best we can tell is it goes back to what we call cold powered shell. What's the fundamental power that's available to something that is a box? That's the residual value. It's not all those improvements that go into it. And so, having said that, there are tremendous tax benefits that go along with the fact that this stuff rolls over and it's not being mined yet. We cut our teeth before the tax law change.
Yes.
In doing syndicated tax equity. There is this whole horizon, follow the executive order that Trump has signed that is supposed to come out by the end of March, on the ability to be able to take this 401k money, $12 trillion, and invest in alternatives that include crypto. Not sure that cohort that is the 12 trillion is going to go into that, because it's more my age than the young age. Private equity, again, maybe they get their fair share. But even if you get a fair share out of ultimately the infrastructure and real estate, that's a lot of money. Okay, so there are those that are staging. You're going to ask me a question about private equity and private credit and insurance and how these guys become AUM. But bottom line is, these guys are staging, whether it's the BlackRocks or the Apollos or the Blackstones, they're all staging to capture that, which is going to be a tremendous amount of capital available. Just think of that. That's of equity. That's probably going to be somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 trillion range. In addition to the insurance capital that's being raised and created as a result of these private equity guys taking on insurance as a business. And so and what are they doing? The smart ones, just to get to the answer to your question before you ask it, the smart ones are out there. They're not just sending their folks out to do marketing. The principals, the smart ones, the principals are out there listening to the investors, trying to figure out not only what they might do with a product that they're selling, but what's the next product they need to be providing. The insurance company, it was pretty simple. These open-ended funds that Blackstone took on, BPIP. That was because one of the clients said, "Hey, look, I know you're here to talk to me about something that is going to be opportunistic, but you're probably going to come across some stuff that ultimately is going to look like value added. And if you do, and so now all of a sudden they're in the value added business, looking for value added, and then the trend goes, well, in the next conversation they have, they're telling them they've got a value added product, and so they're developing products for their clients. I'm not the cynic that some people are. They're just trying to create AUM. I think they're trying to deliver legitimately investment alternatives with people who understand, the product the product that they're investing in, and have better access to it because they've got all this information coming in on themselves.
So, question. I'm looking forward over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm looking forward in the business, and your answer was twofold so far. Was one, data centers, and that investment's going to be massive, and the dollars needed will be massive, and that will be a lot of the future story. No disagreement with that. Second theme is the retail capital coming in, and that's going to change the dynamic, might solve the first problem of the crowding out.
And insurance. It's a third piece.
So if we put them together, and then the other question is that in the past, the United States real estate markets were the safe haven for real estate investment.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. The theme of the podcast in the last 2 episodes, Tim Bodner and Sonny Kelsey, was globalization of where we want to put our capital.
Mm-hmm.
So the markets are becoming more global. The product types in real estate are no longer the 4 food groups. So talk about where you see that going over the next 10 years.
So, I mean, we've already seen it because people have migrated out of, let's just call it multifamily as the housing piece, into manufactured housing, senior housing. They call them the alternatives. The alternatives are becoming the new core,
Right.
plus at least.
Mhm.
So these are migrating across sectors as the demand, and again, you can look at, the aging population, the demographics and everything go along with it. Those are the things that investors are focused on. And where are those markets where I used to say rule of law was an important aspect of it. I still think our Supreme Court is those are the most important 9 guys in the world,
Mhm.
because they're the ones that are the gatekeepers for the rule of law. The United States still has that, notwithstanding this back and forth between what the executive powers are and what the executive branch of all this is. So and we see it. I mean, look, we did the deal with we brought in our friends at Temasek for 2 reasons. One, they're a natural bridge to Asia. We felt like Asia was going to be important in terms of capital and also growth. Now, China is not where it's likely to be for capital chasing, but Singapore is, Japan is,
Huge.
Australia is, huge, right?
Both capital and where you want to put your money.
Exactly. So why did we do it with these guys? One, these people had no natural resources. It's intellectual capital and a free market system. And between them and GIC, they're one of the largest. They're over $2 trillion when it's all said and done. We figured we could get intellectual capital and relationships and trust in that part of the world. That's why we did it, right? So, and again, with some, scientific analysis of it, it just happened to be that we were doing enough business with these people that we knew where the direction of travel is going to come. So that's important. Europe is now 25% of our business. 2012, it was 0, right? We moved when the clients moved because private equity moved to those places and they trusted us.
And when you say it's 25% of your business, is that transactions in Europe or capital from Europe or both the same?
Transactions in Europe. But those relationships are the same. GIC, APG, PGGM, you kind of go through the whole litany of them, and we see the ebb and flow. So you see, a CIC taking a different stance in the U.S. these days than they might have otherwise. You've seen, a variety of different moves as a result of what's going on a geopolitical perspective. But, again, being in it means, you have a pretty good idea as to where it's going. You get the sentiment, not just the specifics. And what I come back to is this collective kind of information flow informs us. And candidly, it's what the C-suite of these large institutions, the reason why we have access to them, and we reach out to them for sure, but they reach out to us because as they develop their strategy, same as these private equity guys are listening, we develop our strategy alongside of their strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I'm thinking back to the comment of the large brokerage firms versus your comment about this. And if you're at the top and VK are at the top of this network of transactions and information and people, as compared to what Brett might have done at Cushman, he's running a multifaceted business. His fingers aren't on the pulse of that wisdom. He's running a diversified company.
Correct.
It's a conglomerate. But you might have the finger really on the pulse of wisdom of where the real estate business is going.
We believe so. And again,
Yeah.
if you look at that Ben Lambert's first comment about who we are and what we are, we're here to serve our clients, and we're not in all these other businesses. For us, at the end of the day, the reliability of closing at the terms and conditions that you agree to is critical. So as a result of what we see, we have a very good idea as to who the credible players are and who have not only the capital to, because we actually curate the list before we before we're hired. I mean, I can tell you the 6 names that are going to come out in a given transaction before it starts.
Not a surprise. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, not only me, but I'm telling you, the 300 other people within this firm, right? They all know too, because you can say, this is the characteristic. I know because I see all the stuff that comes through.
Right.
So does, our management committee of 20 some odd, 22 people.
Right.
They see everything, but our entire firm has access to all of it.
Right.
Now, as a result, at least again, humbly, I feel like we therefore can deliver the right capital for the right situation, which is, more of a curated approach than a mass marketing approach. We don't send out flyers, if you will. These are conversations that our people have because of the relationships they have. And you know what? We have people who have a better relationship with APG. We have people who have a better relationship with GIC. We have people with Aussie Super. We have people at STRS, PERS, New York Common. We leverage off of those relationships because that's where the trust lies. But delivering at the end of the day is all that matters. We can give all the advice in the world, but it's got to be a flawless execution. Because the difference between the advice, the process, and getting it done is the value of what we do. That's why you'll see in everything we talk about is flawless execution. Flawless execution, because we can wave our hands and talk about things with, a great vocabulary, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything unless you finish.
It's funny, flawless execution is, in our business of recruiting, we can't promise what someone might perceive flawless execution to be, because the human element makes our business fuzzy and unpredictable. And someone go, God, that wasn't flawless because I got this guy, not that guy, and I wanted this. I know the 6 buyers are going to be. In your business, of course, it comes down to a number, so the number can work, but the execution does have to complete. So it's just funny to think about that differential.
It's true.
And the human element is still a huge part of your business.
So that comes back to, let's look at AI, right? AI is going to assist us and help us tremendously, but it's not going to be able to make the decision.
No, help a lot. Okay, totally different subject, and we're going to wrap up. I have funny stories to tell you. So on my very first executive search, this is 25 years ago, give or take, I was looking for a national head of investment sales for one of those big companies. I won't name it because probably I shouldn't. And we're starting the search, and I knew nothing about this stuff. So I knew real estate, but I didn't know what we were up to here. And they were looking for a person, and they said, someone like Roy March. They said, and then the guy, he made a face. It was a good face. And he said, I want, he paused, he goes, it's the hair. It's the suit. I want someone who fits that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'll call Roy. I don't think I did. And then we started finding candidates. And about 2 weeks later, after that moment, which was very visceral
Right.
for me, I'm at Pebble Beach. I'm walking in that hallway between the tap room and the place where you have lunch. And you walk by me in the hallway. And I'm going, whoa, it's the hair and it's the suit. Just walked by me.
Yeah.
This is Roy March.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? You've had a massively successful career. There's people in the industry who go, okay, I'm going forward as an advisor or an investment sales broker, or whatever the right words are for this. But talk about your brand and who you are and who you've been since then. And I will tell you, you're wearing a very nice suit and the hair looks the same. So
well,
unpack that.
I don't know. I guess everybody has a brand at the end of the day. Mine's been unmanufactured because if you look at my high school yearbook picture, you're going to see specifically, I can show it to you when we're down here, a suit and the hair, right? And I never gave it up. So, but it was a little bit, I grew up tethering against authority. And so creating an independence, if you
Where'd you
will,
grow up?
in south side of Sacramento.
Okay.
And I had this issue, with authority. I still have it when after 15 million miles, which you'll see on that airplane over there, 15 million miles commercial, which happens to be 30 times to the moon and back. Just the kids out there have fun with that. I still tether at the stewardess who tells me to put my seatbelt on. I know what to do, and so I strove to create as little authority over me as possible, and that had to come by creating value of and a purpose. Now the story. I came on as an unpaid intern, 47 years ago. April 3rd. And I had this image of Ben Lambert that day, which was, I was walking out of the bathroom. It was April 3rd, 1978. And I'm coming out of the bathroom. He happened to be in San Francisco. And he was perfectly coiffed, perfectly dressed. He was not a dandy, but he was just perfect. And he looked larger than life to me. And when I shook his hand and introduced myself, he said to me, listen, kid, let me ask you a question. Have you made more money for this firm than you have in your pocket? And having been selling clothing when I was growing up, basically I said irreverently, I don't know if I've made more money for this firm than I have in my pocket, but I've made more money for this firm than I'm getting paid. I'm working for free. And he said, I like you, kid. He said, listen, I want you to know two things. One, Eastdil Realty, Eastdil deserves every piece of business in the universe. Now go earn it.
Wow.
Number two, never leave a meeting without asking for the order. I still tell that story virtually every time I leave a meeting. I have to ask for the order. It's incumbent upon me. But I think, again, everybody in this firm has a brand, and I joke that Eastdil Secured is an anagram for Cirque du Soleil, and you've got this tent, right? And you've got jugglers, and you've got contortionists, and you've got divers, and you've got all these different things, right? And then you have a crazy couple of ringmasters, right, in the middle. And they couldn't be more different, but they're all in the same tent.
Right.
And they're all there providing value for the people who are there on a collective basis, and any one act can blow it for everyone. So I look at I don't look at myself as a brand. I look at us as a brand. And people always say, you always show up in a suit and tie. And I tell people, I got so much crazy going on up here. I got to camouflage it, right? So for me, it's kind of natural for me because I feel like I'm literally suiting up for the game.
Wow. So 2 or 3 comments. One is when you talk about circus, I thought of diversity of ways of showing up that still fits within the corporate brand, because everyone has to be authentic to their human in how they show up.
Yep.
It took me a long time to do
Yep.
that myself,
Yep.
but I now show up
Yeah.
kind of the same way. It's authentic. If someone else did your shtick, it would fail for them because it
Yeah.
wouldn't be them.
And I'd get back to its authenticity. And for me, genuinely, I have a crush. I lost most of my family when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I have a crush on humanity. It's that simple. I love these people.
Yeah.
They love each other, right? And I said in my 20th anniversary note, we've pushed each other to be the best we can be. We've grown families together and friendships together. This is more of a family business than not. Now, we serve institutionally, but we're a family business, and it has everything to do. Now, there are people who don't fit in, right? And this is another thing when we went through our cultural evaluation that we update every once in a while. Back in 2015, the first one, Stanley came back and said, because it was all anonymous, I will tell you that you have, at the end of the day, you have some zealots and you have some mercenaries. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but you'll find out soon enough. And literally within 12 months, we did. They were the same ones who questioned why we would bring someone like him in to evaluate an industry that, well, you missed the point. It is the culture that drives someone like him that he assesses and then adapts to lead. And that's all he was doing was evaluating what we had and then, providing tools for us to be able to do the things that were, important in leading, not managing, but leading an organization. And every one of our MDs, we have 82, 83 managing directors. Every one of them's a leader. They're player coaches. And you can ask the question about where Roy's going to be in 5 to 10 years. I have no idea. I have a feeling I'm going to hopefully be part of the leadership in this industry around solving the capital issue. But it isn't going to be alone, and it isn't going to be me being the only one. It's because we've got this spread out. We've got the depth chart. Next person up. This succession, which I've been begging for, by the way, for literally the last 10 years, it's been in place. When you look at our management committee, every one of those people are capable of doing what I do, what Mike does, what Mac does. It's and I feel blessed to be able to have those kinds of people in my universe.
Right. One of the things that's also a blessing, this is working for me. I am semi-retired as of a couple weeks ago, and semi-retired means there's more time for my own life, but also still time for this life. And this life wants me here. And the blessing, and you just described, in 5 years, you may not be in this exact chair, but you may be solving some problems for the industry or weighing in on how that moves, because the industry still wants you and needs you then. And the blessing is to be relevant then, regardless of what the chair is. Have some relevance and some involvement, because you just can't walk away from it.
No, the relevancy is everything. Again, if you look at our mission statement, it is that we come up with creative, actionable ideas that are flawlessly executed and to be the most relevant players in the real estate capital markets on a global basis. Pretty simple stuff.
Beautiful. We need to wrap up. The last question on Leading Voices is always advice to a young person. I'd say entering the real estate business, because that's what it always is, but it might be entering the advisory business. So what's your advice to a young person in thinking of this kind of career?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, to the extent that you're a curious soul and not a lab rat, let's call them, this is the most interesting industry I believe, that exists, because you take the creative, the seance, and the science,
Mm.
and you get to work all sides of it. And if you have any interest at all in, what forms the demand for things, is it a location? Is it a floor plate? Is it access to power? Is it a distribution system? All of those things, to me, it's a form of art, right? And the ability to be able to express that, it's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this industry, I think it's the most interesting industry there is. But you have to also think about it in terms of who and where you want to play it. And my advice, because we've got 52 interns during the summer. We've
Right.
got new hires that come through. And my advice is don't ever take a job for money.
Mm.
Evaluate, if you will, the value system and the as best you can, the moral compass and authenticity of the people you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that people are here because they trust the people they're working with. They feel an obligation to be as good at what they do as the people they work with,
Mm-hmm.
but never feel like they're better than any of the others.
Mm.
And that's what motivates people, in my opinion, because success isn't about the money. In my mind, when I'm asked that, it's like, think about life fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that will fulfill your life? It's the experiences and the people. And I don't think there's an industry that have more of the creatives than ours do.
Mm. It's interesting. Wait, we're in Los Angeles, and you're saying that you can't think of an industry that has more of the creatives than our industry. I will buy that. So
By the way, if you talk to Bob Iger, or
Uh-huh.
I had lunch yesterday with Brian Graves, or these curious people, they're so fascinated by
right.
what it is that leads to it. And as I say, I mean, I had no idea I wanted to do this. It
Yeah.
just happened.
The other comment that's been through this, and it's one of my favorite expressions for advice, which is it's a long game.
Yeah.
And if it's a long game, the way you behave day one is as important as the way you behave year 20.
It is. Well, it's interesting because, people aspire and for integrity.
Yep.
And I mean, that's what gives them their true north. And you have to trust the integrity around you.
Mm-hmm.
This conversation I'm going to have this afternoon is going to be all about what do you do to create a community, a state that ultimately has the integrity of purpose, so that the overall, the people within that community all feel valuable.
Well, I'm going to do a ... on that one and leave it from here. But thank you very much, Roy.
Thank you.
It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember, if you're enjoying Leading Voices, to share an episode with a friend or get them to subscribe. If they're podcast wary and not sure how to find and subscribe on their phone, go ahead and take their phone in your hand and subscribe for them. And add another few of your favorite podcasts to their list to get them started. They'll thank you for it. You can also find episodes of the show on our website, which you can find at zrgpartners.com/leadingvoices. And if you have comments or discussion about this episode or Leading Voices in general, or if you're seeking help in real estate human capital solutions, recruiting or consulting especially, please contact me at mslepin@zrgpartners.com. Thanks for being a listener to Leading Voices.